Welcome to Caged Minds Uncensored. This week coming up, I have a conversation with Austin Trout. Joining me right now, though, my good friend Sal Mora. How you doing?
Doing good. How are you, Micah?
I'm doing good. It was another fun weekend of combat sports action. Friday night, we had some LFA, some UFC. You had Bellator on Saturday, messing a little bit of people up with the switching up of days between Bellator and the UFC. And if you didn't know it from Bellator, it was a Bellator 183 and Bellator Kickboxing 7 evening. So we have a lot to talk about. Where do you want to start, Sal?
Let's jump right in. I didn't get to see LFA, and it did piss, or I should say, it didn't piss me off. It did confuse me because I thought it was Friday, the fights. Actually, I thought the Bellator. That's how much I've been paying attention. I thought the Bellator fights were Friday night, not Saturday, so that confused. And then the and a whole weekend of confusion. The UFC fights, I thought they were on Fight Pass. And come to find out now, just talking with you, they were on FXX, correct?
Correct. First time they've done that. Interesting, I heard that Fox does have control in the deal of what events they show where. I think originally, actually, with it being from Japan, as we've seen a lot of those Asia events, they are Fight Pass exclusive. Some reason with the time difference, I guess they realized it would work out, and Fox picked this one up, but I don't think they did a good enough job throughout the week of everybody really promoting where you could see this fight.
Yeah, definitely not. It kind of felt like it was kind of just brushed under the rug for the UFC. Just like Saturday night, the Bellator kickboxing was brushed under the rug for the kickboxing stand-up fight fans that want to see kickboxing, want to see it grow. I think that's where Bellator and UFC dropped the ball this weekend, definitely in that department.
The UFC picked up their ball, ran and hid in a corner, specifically because of last weekend's injury notification of Mauricio Shogun, who all of a sudden, when it's time to get on the plane to go to Japan, announces he can't make it because he has a knee injury. The only guy that they can find in the area that's a notable MMA fighter that can make 205 pounds is Yushin Okami, who gets absolutely railroaded and ran through by St. Preux, made look like an amateur for a black belt judoka. That's a reason why the UFC didn't promote it. And why Bellator doesn't talk about kickboxing. If you check out Instagram, Joe Silling's Instagram has an angry response to it. They're paying the fighters well. They're doing that endeavor of the business to really show that they want to move forward with kickboxing. But on the Viacom side, why not go live? Was the Cops Marathon for the 800th millionth time that you're running that much more important than going Bellator 183, Bellator Kickboxing 7? Not to mention, if you were actually watching Bellator, I want to know why them and the UFC are starting to run this competition of who could string the night out longer with showing us less action. As fans, I'm getting sick and tired of people having to suffer for stoppages with filler, especially when you have something like a Bellator kickboxing event. You're giving us all this filler, you're walking guys out to the cage, running another commercial, then coming back for the introductions. I think the way that they're running the shows, there's still something flawed in what Viacom's doing, and then being 1 foot in the water in kickboxing is not helping.
No, definitely not. And again, they're starting to mirror each other a little bit in that department of dragging the fights on. I understand everybody's got to get paid. You're selling advertisement, be it not only the UFC advertisements, but then the television networks got to get paid and sell their advertisements. But there's got to be a way to move the TV fights along. But isn't it funny? A few years ago, we were complaining that the fights weren't even on free TV. And now our biggest gripe is, yeah, there's free fights on TV, but they're making them stretch so long in between the fights that there's more talk, less action in the cage. So we're damned if we do, damned if we don't. But I will say this: the Bellator fights, from the opening fight on the TV portion till the end, it was a solid card. I would say it sounded like the crowd was engaged for the most part until the main event, which kind of got a little boring. But hey, it's a technical fight at that point, and I could see where some fans get a little restless. But overall, I thought it was a good card. What did you think about the whole event?
I thought it was a good card. I'm still, even when we talk about Bellator, I'm mystified that they can run prelims and not fit the whole prelim card in to where there's still post-lims. That still feels so archaic to me for them to be doing that. Even this long in a Scott Croker's tenure, I can't believe they do that. But as the fight card, that main fight card, I thought they did a very good job of giving Aaron Pico a beatable opponent. I think Pico still got touched a lot more than the announcers will ever admit. He has holes in his game. He's not everything they'd hoped he could be, but a good solid win. I wish they'd temper it back on him and the way that they're pushing him on everything. Roy Nelson, I wonder what he has left in the tank after this performance. He had to wrestle a Javi Ayala that we know has power in his hands, but I didn't know that he was a dynamic striker, throwing all this plethoras of weapons at a Roy Nelson who didn't even seem to be concerned enough to really jab. We had always heard about Roy Nelson's ground game. We got a chance to see it, and it was still kind of underwhelming from a kid that's a lot greener on his back. So, kind of wondering maybe it was the hoopla, the build-up. Did he put too much pressure on himself? I'm interested more to see Roy Nelson's next performance than I'm excited about this last one. Paul Daly, that man has dynamite in his hands. That was amazing. Lorenz Larkin looked good in the first round. Then he got touched. Bellator, people will say this dignifies them as having talent. I never thought they didn't have talent. He's fought two of the harder fights you could fight in Bellator. Douglas Lima is a world-class welterweight champion, even though Ben Askren out-wrestled him. Since then, outside of a knee injury, we've seen a devastating striker. And on the other side, Daly, the only reason, he's not in a bigger promotion is because he didn't know how to handle a loss to Josh Koscheck, and I believe that promotion should never welcome him back. So Lorenz Larkin, a tough night, but for the most part, an exciting fight, and a weird ending to where part of his fighter IQ is what you question in that finish, where his right hand was so low, not recognizing at all times it needed to be high from that Daly left hook. Henderson Pitbull was a close fight. I watched it the first time. I thought Henderson won. I watched it a second time. It is a close fight, but I'll give it to Pitbull that second time. Not an egregious kind of stoppage. So a fun night of fights, I thought, from Bellator 183.
Yeah, I agree with you with Pico. This kid has been always talked about behind the scenes for a while, especially with MMA, like the I guess what would you call them? Not Johnny Come Latelys, but the hardcores.
The underground.
Yeah, I never thought I'd hear the underground fans call it that, but yeah, those type of fans. He's got the boxing pedigree behind him. He's got the wrestling. He's got the Eddie Bravo Jiu-Jitsu 10th Planet. So, which is designed technically for fighting, for UFC, for grappling. When you get strikes thrown at you, that's what his style of jiu-jitsu is based off of. And just seeing him come in these two fights, I gave him a D- for his last one, because maybe they shouldn't have given him such a hard fight to start up. But again, he's saying it's his choice. So that's why I say I won't give him a complete F, and I won't give him anything higher than a D- for that very first fight that he had where he got knocked out. Or was it knocked out or choked out?
It was choked out after getting dropped with a uppercut.
But yeah, a bomb, right?
Yeah.
So, and then this fight, I just expected a little bit more from him. Yes, he got the knockout. Yes, it was spectacular. But he just showed a whole heck of a lot of holes. He sat down on his punches when he was throwing them in bunches against the cage, and that exposed him to getting cracked quite a few times. If it was a bigger fighter, somebody that's in his weight class, and not somebody moving up to fight him in a weight class, I think they could have put lights out on him, and that would have been the end of his. That would have been 0-2. You know, whether it be a technical knockout or a knockout. And I don't know. You said that you thought that he should be on the undercard like a lot of the other guys. Correct?
Ed Davis, Ed Ruth, all the other, that big five, they're free agent wrestlers that they've picked from NCAA, their next star generation of Bellator. Like those guys, I believe that Pico should be a lot lower down on the card, getting his ears wet a little bit. You can be an Olympic wrestler. Awesome. That's great experience. You can be a Golden Gloves boxer. Great. The fact that he had no amateur experience in MMA would still be worrisome to me, and I would still want to see him with guys closer to the number of fights that he's taken instead of going against guys with 10 fights each. It's not a bad move giving him a 35er, but how long are we going to have this? Where do they go next with him? It will be very intriguing. And even the fact, when do they give him a fight with a guy that we've seen in their cage before?
Absolutely. Those are all questions that, you know, the matchmaker for Bellator and the management company that reps Aaron need to come together and go from there and see what's the best next step. I would agree with you. Maybe we do put him on the undercard and let him just fight, get another one. Now he's 2-1. You know, bring him back up to the main card at that point. I just think they hyped him up so much that they're having a hard time not putting him on TV at this point in time. Roy Nelson, yeah, he looked every bit his age. I wasn't shocked there on that one. Larkin, he got suckered into a stand-up fight. I really believe that in my heart. I think Paul Daly knew what he needed to do, and he suckered him into, hey, let's stand and trade. And as you said, you know, he's got dynamite in his fist. Laid him out, and that's all she wrote. That just shows that, yes, Bellator does have talent. And speaking of, yes, Bellator does have talent, and it's not just, oh, the best guys are in the UFC, because I don't believe that. I think there's just as good fighters in Bellator, LFA. They just might be in the smaller promotions. I wouldn't even say lower level, because when these UFC guys come over, and you could say, oh, well, some of them are a little outdated per se. Well, Larkin wasn't. You know, he just wasn't. Rory isn't. I don't believe he is. I mean, yeah, he lost his last 2-3 of them, but what were they, 2 champions?
Rory
Basically.
Lost to a murderer's row. My biggest question with him still is, once he takes a hard punch to that nose, what happens? And thankfully Douglas Lima's going to give us an opportunity, hopefully, to see that.
I think it shatters, and I think he keeps moving forward. I don't think, I mean, hey, and I could be wrong, but Robbie Lawler put it on him pretty good. It was like almost to the death, it seemed like, when they fought. And he kept moving forward. He kept fighting. So I don't see any difference. But it's just nice to see that they're starting to commingle, and maybe we'll see that people will understand that, yeah, not every single best fighter is in the UFC, and not every single lower level fighter is in a Bellator, is in an LFA, or another lower level fight league that they consider lower level. That it's spread across the board, and any given day anybody can get beat. It's just the way it is. Ben Henderson, I'm surprised that how much of a decline he's falling. His first one, I gave him a pass. He went up to 170. And I said, okay, hey, he was fighting there. He was fighting a little bit of success, dabbling here and there, but he just got caught up. This time around, it's the past two times that he's fought now.
Close decision losses to Michael Chandler and Patricky Pitbull Freire were both fights reasonably on the cards. You could have gave it to Henderson, but his inability to complete his takedowns, I think, has been detrimental since coming over to Bellator.
Yeah, and it's just shocking to see that. Yeah, it's not even shocking. It's a breath of fresh air to see that these guys are getting the shine now. And unfortunately, you're going to have to use these UFC guys just no different than the UFC does to the old Lions, putting in the young guys. I picture it, Rashad Evans and Chuck Liddell. They made a star into Rashad when he laid him out. Now, Chuck was still popular, don't get me wrong, but that skyrocketed Rashad to being top 5 for the longest time. Now he's the old Lion, and it's his turn to get beat, and they bring in these guys, and he's kind of at the tail end of his career, and it happens to everybody. It happens to everybody. So it's interesting to see their product. Now, what were your thoughts on Claudia's performance? She trains out of Ray Yee and Crystal Trout's gym. What did you think about that fight?
Oh, actually, you jumped ahead of me real quick. I still had a couple thoughts on Bellator. Seeing that change as you're talking about is great, but right now that also shows this cluster that we have in the Bellator lightweight division, where they want to make the Premise Chandler rematch happen. They keep giving Patricky Pitbull this opportunity to be a star, but if Chandler wins, they're trying to sell us a fight between Chandler and Pitbull where Chandler's already beat him twice. So they're giving themselves opportunities. There's still some problems, and this whole time we also forgot to mention Goichi Yamauchi, who I believe got his 22nd win, submitting Adam Pico. Pico was 9-0, undefeated. He was a guest of our show before the fight. He gets submitted, and that's a big win for Goichi, who also throws himself in there. So they have a lot of talent everywhere to finish off our Bellator conversation. Now, going to Claudia, the way Jessica Andrade manhandled Gadella in the grappling and just the physical strength that she showed us was really amazing. Early in that first round, it looked like it was Claudia's fight. Her striking looked to have went to another level. She busted open Jessica, but then by the time she ended up on her back in the first round, it looked like the damage getting busted open next to her eye, it took something out of her that she never got back, and I was quite surprised to see her not be able to get up off of her back when she was there.
Now, rumors have it that they were working off their back in this camp and getting her out after a couple, if they couldn't find a submission quick enough, they wanted her off her back. Is it a language barrier that's going through? Is it, hey, I'm the fighter, I'm going to kind of set in my old ways type of thing? Because she looked great in that fight. Her first fight with Chris, and Ray Yee, and then this one she kind of just went flat, kind of like it was just weird to see, because you even mentioned a girl that looked so much in shape, and now she looked out of shape in the fight. Like, did she overtrain? Was she overtrained? Was it too close? What do you think happened to her?
As we're talking about it, and I don't know if it was too many fights in too soon of a time, talking about there was the Joanna fight, then she kept going, and there was getting back on track, beating Courtney Casey, and then the win over Carolina, and now this fight with Jessica. She had been kind of on a rapid pace. Not to mention, if you know Claudia, she was, after the fight in Brazil against Carolina, there was staying in Brazil, there was going to New Jersey, there was moving here to Albuquerque, there was a lot of emotional things, they were setting up a life here in Albuquerque. We touched on that in the interview I had with her pre-fight. So there was a lot going into it, and maybe taking on all these challenges at once was too much. in the fight, I almost feel like some of that was just reverting back to her own ways, because you just need to know the Chris Luttrell style to know if you can't get a submission right away, he is working with all these guys to let's get up if we're not on top. We're not trying to be on bottom. I'd rather have you against the cage where you have ways to back out. You're not on your back. So I wonder if it was that. And we also, addressing that ground and pound in the first round, as I was watching it live, I thought she was doing a really good job of controlling biceps and limiting from the damage she took. When the round was over and Claudia stood up, and then we all saw the cut on the left side of her eye, maybe that ground and pound got through more, and we don't know how much damage Claudia actually took in that point, how hurt she was, and maybe that compelled the decline in cardio because you're more frantic when you're possibly concussed. It was a bad night for Team Claudia.
Where does she go from here?
That's the interesting part. You look at the women's 115-pound division, and it's kind of wide open. And it's really weird to say because, well, first off, you got to realize Claudia keeps getting notable fights. Outside of the Courtney Casey fight, which seemed to be an oddity, a lot of these fights have been really synonymous names. And I'd throw it out there that her and Michelle Waterson are both coming off of losses, even though they've shared a training mat together. It almost in name recognition would make sense.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it does make sense. And yeah, they shared a mat, but you know what? John and Rashad shared a mat. It started it way back when, and everybody was fine with that one on both sides. I don't think Luttrell would have a hard time with that. You know, you read most recently you saw Jordan and Nick Urso fight each other. So, and yeah, I don't know if they've technically ever shared the mat, but there was some cross-training going on at the time between the teams, and now you're seeing them separate and grow and becoming their own brands. Of course, the Jackson Weeks brand has been strong and established, but now you're seeing Luttrell's and Yee's brands branch out and be stronger and grow their own stable of young, hungry fighters, and so why not? I mean, I'm all for that.
I mean, and honestly, looking at the rankings, just jumping over to them now, there'd be a possibility, depending on how long Claudia wants to be sidelined. Felice Herrig keeps screaming for a bigger fight. Claudia's still going to be in the top 5 rankings, even with this loss to Jessica, so that would be an opportunity. Or even a Randa Marcos if Claudia looks for a bounce-back fight, who's coming off of a loss, who has been very competitive in her fights. I think that's where she goes. And Jessica Andrade probably is somewhere between talking the UFC into letting them, you know, a Michelle Waterson, a Cynthia Calvillo, something, because there's nobody else above her, and there's no reason now to give her a title fight, though, coming off of what I thought was a one-sided loss to Joanna.
And you're saying for Claudia, give her Felice, correct?
Yeah, Felice Herrig or possibly a Randa Marcos if you give Claudia a bounce-back fight. I was saying for Jessica, she's looking at an upper echelon fight, and I'm not sure who that is.
Yeah, for Jessica, it'd be a little bit, you know, they'd probably wait for a little bit to move her up somewhere. I'm all for any of those, you know, for Claudia to move forward and get a bounce back fight. Randa Marcos is okay. I like Felice. I think that's a good name to bounce back with. I think she beat the brakes off of her, and to me, she's just a crybaby, especially this last time around when she said that it's only the pretty girls that get anything, but yet she was one of the girls that would show her ass on Instagram and do everything all over her and the queen or whatever the crap that dumb girl from Farmington would do on her dumb post.
Going old school, Sal, you got to agree with me on this. I believe Alienware or Sucker Punch, I want to say that was the first time I ever saw Felice Herring. And yeah, she was totally trying to capitalize off of that sex appeal back when everything was first starting.
So to me, it doesn't hold weight. And I've been waiting for a long time. When you said her name, it triggered it in my brain. When she gave her little sappy bullshit crying at the press conference, and everybody gave her, oh, poor Felice. No, Google her and look at her past pictures. She sex appealed it up for everybody prior. Come on. That's another topic for another time. She drove me nuts with that.
We had already finished talking about Bellator, but we forgot to throw it out there. Where do you think they go with Benson Henderson from here?
Honestly, I don't know. That's what I was thinking about after the fight ended on Saturday. I was sitting here and I was like, all right, he's lost. Where do you go with him? I would just, honestly, you move him down the card, feed him to one of these young, hungry lions that are up-and-comers and right there on the cusp of breakout star, and let him fade to black. There's nothing you can do at this point. That's honestly the only thing you can do is kind of like use him as a gatekeeper, gauge these young guys, and if they can't hang with him or if they give a highlight reel knockout, then move them forward at that point. That's kind of where he's at. Pay him out, let him play his contract, and let him go on his way.
Brandon Gertz is coming off a loss to Derek Campos in what may have been the fight of the year in Bellator. It was a bloody war. I would give Brandon Gertz a consolation prize for one of their non-temples, one of these smaller events like we saw last night. I think that Benson Henderson still has a certain name value where for at least one more fight, you could put him in a main event with a guy who, like Brandon Gertz, is notorious for fun brawls. Or you go the other way and you put it together for one of their tent bowl events somewhere on the main card. You do the rematch, Josh Thompson, Benson Henderson. If Josh Thompson isn't just his career as I hold the mic and I smile on Bellator and I say, this next fight's going to be really exciting when they give him the camera.
I like either way. And the truth is, that if they're going to go with the Thompson fight, put it in Arizona. Put it in Arizona where Benson is from and lives and has a gym. It's not that far from California. They can travel down, and do a smaller casino show, not a temple, but a Friday night fight. It's a good main event, good co-main event, and go for it. Or on the other end, make him a featured bout, not the co-main, not the main, but put him as a featured bout and put one of these young guns, like I said, in there, and let's see what they can do.
And I don't know if you've noticed this, but I've been kind of shocked how Bellator has become more inclusive almost. Thackerville, the Ute Mountain Casino, the SAP Center. I feel like we're hitting the same venues more often. I'm happy that the Forum in LA has been added to that. This will be their second time in January going there. But as Bellator has gotten more international, going to Budapest, going to Israel, going to Italy, I feel like they've became less mobile in America, picking and choosing only a couple places where they're going to do their events.
Well, and I think those casinos probably give them probably a site fee for TV, and that's why you're seeing them stick with that site fee. And those ain't so much the tent poles. And this is my promoter hat coming on. Is that this is my thought? I have no idea whether they do or don't. But I do know that if you get a site fee, you usually kind of want to lock in a contract, whether it's 1 year, 2 year contract, and it's set that they're coming back 3 times a year. This is the time frame. You're going to pay a site fee. The casino will pay them a site fee to bring in the TV, and that's kind of my thoughts behind them working with these smaller casinos and not trying to expand too far, and you're seeing the tentpoles, per se, in the bigger venues.
Slowly but surely, I'm still hearing murmurs from Bellator fighters that inactivity is bothering a lot of them. Do you think we're going to start to see them rev up the amount of events? Because you'll still see Bellator. I believe we're heading into a quarter where they're going to do 3 events in 4 weeks or so, but they've been shy to be too consistent. They've still had these large gaps of inactivity, leading to fighters having even larger gaps of inactivity.
I hope so. I mean, this is the way the fighters make their money. And some guys have accused me and said, "Oh, well, you're just about a promotion and you're about the money yourself." Well, no, I'm not. It's not about that. It's about putting on exciting fights. 1, keeping guys busy. 2, and then having to manage all of them at the same time. Because you still got to get ratings, and that's the thing people don't realize. There's still got to be some kind of rating ceiling or range that they have to hit. It isn't just, put the fights on. Who cares if this guy is no good? Just throw him out there. You signed him, so go ahead. It's got to make sense. It's either got to be ratings for TV or you got to be selling tickets. And I'll take the line from Zach, the matchmaker from Bellator. It's either your ratings on TV or you're putting asses in the seats. It's one or the other, or you're not fighting. And that was the mentality before. And I get where that not always does it work that way, but for the promotions that live and die on actual real fans coming out and seeing the fights and not relying so much on the words or the 3 letters UFC, because you see it, and you're seeing it even in Canada. You saw with the last pay-per-view, they sold out. It was a shit card. It was garbage. I didn't think it was very good, and it was a pay-per-view.
No, that card was quite lackluster.
And you even stated it yourself. You said people did not refund their tickets.
They wanted to see UFC action.
Now okay, let's take it a step further. Compare that card, that pay-per-view card, to Saturday night's Bellator. Which one would you rather watch as a fan, Michael? As a fight fan.
Top to bottom, it would probably be the Bellator card. Comparing those 2 cards, what we were left with, that's a really close one. They were really comparable at that point.
So, but you would give the nod to the Bellator fight, correct?
I believe so. When you look at the name recognition that we would all see from Paul Daly and Benson Henderson, Lorenz Larkin versus Nunez Shevchenko, which ended up, being what it was. Yeah, you would look at the Bellator fight.
Though, right now, if you go across the board, you knew what the outcomes were, how the styles happened, how the fights ended. Which one would you rather watch?
Man, I'm trying to totally think back to what UFC with the recent card was.
And all I'm talking about is the main card. So the pay-per-view versus the TV fight on Spike. 9 times out of 10, you're going to choose the TV fight. And I'm not saying it for pay-per-view wise, but I just think it was a better card overall on Spike TV versus what they gave on pay-per-view. But there's less fans in the stands for the Bellator fight versus the Canada UFC pay-per-view that was weak. For pay-per-view, that was a weak card.
It didn't hurt with a couple strategery. There was Gavin Tucker on the prelims. There was Mitch Clark. There was a couple Canadians from that Providence that were high hopes. So some of the live audience was explained, I believe, by that local talent. Like a Brazil card is overfilled with Brazilians. The Canada card was overfilled with Canadians. And I think that really helped them in the drawing power of that card.
Yeah, definitely. So it's hit and miss, but the point being the ticket sellers and the ratings driven fighters, the guys that bring the asses in the seats and boost the ratings, those are the guys that are going to get the fights. Unfortunately, I hope going back to what the whole thing about the fighters complaining about not staying active, busy. I'm hoping that they can figure it out, whether it's shifting the undercards and giving more undercard fights and just putting some of these guys up, whether it's, they don't get TV time, well, so be it. You're getting the fight, you're staying active, you're out there. We'll see what happens.
Bellator's moving forward. They still got some fun fights to make, and we've actually, even for right now, since Lorenz Larkin, we've gone a couple months where the free agency hype and the free agency kind of transition has kind of cooled off, it seems like, at the moment. Something that we haven't touched on right now. It's very interesting. The Ultimate Fighter's going on, and if you didn't see, last week there was the announcement that Bellator will be crowning a women's flyweight champion in November, a rematch of Alimale McFarland between Emily Ducote. Kind of funny, the timing right there. Oh, the Ultimate Fighter's crowning a champion? We're going to crown our champion now.
Well, I also, they were kind of the ones that brought out the 125ers first. UFC capitalized. So it's a chess match, basically. Or you could call it a pissing contest, whatever you want to call it. But this is basically what happened. 115, 135. They didn't have a 145. So Bellator said, okay, we're going to take all the 135ers that want to drop to 125. They played their chess game, and any girls that want to move up from 115 in the UFC, well, now they have an option. They can come to us after they fight their contract up. UFC was smart enough to understand that there's been a loud enough bark within the 135, 115 weight division saying, hey, I wish there was a middle ground. And so that's where you're going to see a lot of the shift. Again, Bellator announced it first. They're not dumb. They're going to play off their hand of the UFC and the whole announcement of the 125-pound title. Good for women's MMA. I mean, I think Scott's probably one of the best guys in terms of women's mixed martial arts for a while now. I mean, it shows when you had Cyborg, when you had Misha, when you had Ronda Rousey. I mean, these ladies came out through him, through his organization. So who, if anybody, is going to find him? I think it'll be him.
Right now, the one thing that I was disappointed in Bellator is that they left a lot of chips on the table. They were never able to sign Barb Honchak, Roxanne Modafferi. You look at the crop of girls that the UFC put together for the Ultimate Fighter, and I feel like personally that Bellator left a lot of chips on the table, and in the whole division of women's flyweights, they specifically picked and chose some of the younger, prettier girls that they wanted to try to build, and grab some other girls that were from the local California area, and they've done this in a particular way where there were notable fighters that we've seen from other promotions that it kind of spoke volumes to me that we don't see them there. And the one that jumps off the page on everything I've heard is Andrea KGB Lee, the LFA former Legacy Women's 125-pound champion. And if there's anybody that's going to compete with Scott Croker for finding women's talent, it seems to be Mick Maynard from Legacy, as he put together a very good division in Legacy, and they're doing a very good job now as Legacy Fighting Alliance, LFA, of developing that feeder system with Isabel Mazo and Andrea Lee, who we just saw, and a couple others. They're building that bridge to the UFC through LFA, it seems like, and where I think Bellator kind of messed up a little bit.
Maybe. Again, you got to go, and I'm going to throw my promoter hat on and dealing with contracts and fighters and whatnot. You just mentioned it, Mick Maynard. Who is he? The matchmaker for the UFC now. So there's got to be some kind of motive behind the scenes for the UFC to bring him in. Well, okay, you got fighters, regional fighters. You have You have female fighters that you sign. Anybody that's signed to LFA moving forward has that option to move up to the UFC. What if they don't have that option to move across to Bellator? You know, and just like Invicta. Invicta's contract only lets the girls go out to Bellator. To the UFC. The UFC. That's where they move on to. They don't move to Bellator. They're not allowed because they're on the UFC Fight Pass network. It could be the same kind of setup. We don't know unless we get our hands on one of their contracts. But that's the release. I think that's where they get released. So, I mean, maybe she was already signed and there's nothing they can do. I don't know for sure. I'm just throwing my promoter hat on and playing the other side and saying, yeah, there are going to be girls that we're going to hit miss. And especially when they can dangle that carrot of, hey, we can get you win 2-3 fights impressively in our show, we can get you the nod to go up to UFC. Who isn't going to take that? Heck, we took that whenever I was in a promotion. We dangled the Bellator carrot. I'm not afraid to say it. That's what we did. You win it. It was win to get in. We were the first show to do that. It was the first Tuesday night series before Tuesday night series happened.
I remember the good old days of AAA MMA.
And that's what we did. We if you won, and you won impressively, we would tell you, we'll sign you to a Bellator contract. It wasn't rocket science back then, and it's the same setup. These guys are all doing the same kind of setup nowadays. It was kind of fresh and new when we were doing it. There was only a handful that were doing it. Not too many, and they were doing it quietly. I don't think there was very many that were open about what they were doing like we were.
And now moving back to what I wanted to bring up, have you been watching this season of the Tough Series to crown a champion?
I haven't. I did catch last week's with Nico with Fit NHB. She brought the Fit NHB style. I mean, you know their fighting style. That's what she brought.
Stifled Lauren Murphy, stifled those takedowns, beat her up on the feet. Yeah. Nico has really started to blossom into a complete mixed martial artist, a multiple threat, and I don't have any information on how the show goes, but I expected her to make noise. This was outstanding, beating a UFC rostered fighter. Big things for her.
Yes, huge for her. Huge for her. Because regardless, win, lose, or draw, you know, from here on out, well, she impressed. She impressed.
Big things coming from all of women's MMA. It was a great week again talking to you, Sal. Great being joined by you. Great talking to you.
Thank you for having me, Micah.
Joined by Austin Trout. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. So it's been a while for you, 15 months? So how does it feel just to get back to action, have a date on paper?
Well, one, it's like I got a job again. I feel like I've been out of work for a year, you know? And straight up, I was turning into what is it called, Mr. Mom, you know, just taking care of the house and the kids, and then I ain't like that. I ain't like that at all.
So you saw what, I don't know, down the road could look like, and you're like, oh no, I got to get back in the gym now while I have time?
Well, you know, I was in the gym the whole time, trying not to get fat. Let me tell you, after you turn 30, the bounce back is not so quick. and you know, I just wanted to stay in some kind of shape, and call it vain if you want, but it helped me, you know, stay sharp through this long layoff.
You're like, the dad life is not conducive with keeping this body.
It's not. You get a dad bod, living that dad life.
Now, having lived that boxing life, though, off of boxing, how nice was it to feel that other side, live that dad life for a little bit?
No, it was, don't get me wrong, it was great, and I love my kids. I love being involved and in around, and a lot of times that I've missed out on a lot of things because of boxing. So it was definitely great, fresh, just to be back and there steadily, you know, for my kids, for the games, for the school, for whatever it is that they needed. And I felt like I needed that too. just to keep my family unit stronger. So it was a blessing in itself, the layoff. I mean, we could look at it like it's a year and a half of not taking any wear and tear. You know, it's a year of rest. But you know, I've had a lot of fights and a lot of experience, and so I don't feel ring rust will be an issue, especially the way I feel it in sparring and in camp and whatnot. You know, it was nice to be home. I'm not gonna lie. As much as I say I didn't like this whole Mr. Mom situation, I loved it. You know, not more than boxing though.
I gotta figure though that somewhere between either the drive to the gym or while you're in the gym or the drive home, in between those mom or those dad moments when you were still putting in your work, you're thinking, why am I not getting a fight? Why is the business side of boxing? Tell us about that, because I'm sure those thoughts came up though during this time.
Those is when it was getting hard. You know, I'm the type that if it bothers me, I kind of push it to the back, out of sight, out of mind. But when it's your career and the number one question is when's your next fight, I don't know, or when they start asking you, are you even fighting anymore? You know, that's when it starts hurting. You're like, yeah, like I'm not retired. Did you see my last fight? It was a great fight, you know what I mean, against the top guy in the game. So, you know, why would I retire after something like that? And that's when it would bother me. And really, there's still no good answer or reason for the layoff, except all I could just chalk it up is it's God's plan, you know. And his plan trumps everybody's plan, so I just have to kind of get on board and see where he's going to take me with this plan.
So a year and a half, where did it go from, I'm sure you wanted some time off, camp, everything, family time. When did it become that point where you're like, hey, making phone calls like, somebody fight me, what's going on?
Well, I didn't really want time off at all because before then I was off 8 months before the Charlo fight. And I don't like these layoffs. Honestly, the boxing world has yet to see the best of Austin Trout because I don't get to stay busy like I want to. Maybe once I get to get busy and I feel like after winning this fight, I have a mandatory right in December, and then hopefully they can get me back in by February, March with the unification. Then I think you'll see the best of Austin Trout because I'll have activity, whereas I could just build off of what I was doing instead of having to come back and rebuild.
Now heading into Brooklyn against Hurd, a title fight. You already talked about ring rust, but you said you're better when you're more active. So how do you get back to feeling that way, and how do you head into this fight?
We've had a long camp. We've been training since March, for real. And not 100% because that's how you get overtrained. You know, we've been doing it smart. Whereas, you know, we get to a point, and the fight was pushed back numerous times, so we would fall back a little bit, you know, and just try to time it right. So we've had a long camp, and I I think we've knocked off the rust throughout this time in camp. You know, the weight's good. You know, that's another thing I was worried about was if my weight was going to come down like it used to or like it should have after being off a year and a half. But my weight's good. You know, I'm making goals. I'm set. I'm surpassing these goals that I set.
So we'll call that weight kind of worry a 30 issue. Like now that I'm 30 again, we got to work a little bit harder. So you were just kind of, is the science going to happen? And so far, your body's still reacting the same.
Still reacting the same. You know, I don't eat bad. You know, I don't eat too bad anyway. Yeah, I have my sweets here and there, but I make my wife cook a lot, or I cook. You know, so it's really a lot of home cooked meals that I eat anyway. I'm not a fan of fast food anymore. It's crazy because I used to love it. I used to be the junk food king. I can't eat it no more. You know, I call it age or call it just because I know what they put in that crap. But I can't eat none of that stuff no more. So I think the nutrition part definitely. I tell everybody, a six-pack doesn't start doing crunches. It starts on your plate, and it's true because my weight's good and I don't feel drained or anything. You know, I was at low 60s just 2 days ago, 62. And I wasn't drained, you know, my head wasn't too big, you know, so I can lose the extra, 6 pounds, 7 pounds and still feel strong, I believe.
Now, how do you deal with it? You're professional, but you've had a lengthy career. How do you deal with all these pushbacks? It's part of the game, it's part of boxing, but when you have an opponent, you guys are zeroing it in, you know you're going to fight each other, but you said the date's been moved back. How do you deal with that?
You know, it's a bummer because we have a schedule. You know, we're trying to peak at the right time, and we're on schedule, and then they push it back, so we have to kind of fall back and reevaluate where we need to be. for this new date. And really the pushbacks aren't the problem. It's if they cancel the fight that's the problem. So I'm okay with pushbacks as long as they don't keep pushing it back too far. Mind you, we're supposed to fight in, I want to say, April or May. Now it's pushed all the way to October, which is the better part of this year. I mean, I didn't have a summer. I didn't get to do the summer things, which could be a blessing in itself. That's how you get in trouble.
And so one of those things also makes the 1.5 layoff sound a lot longer. Also, you're like, wait.
Yeah.
This is like 4 or 5 months added on to the layoff that was not by choice.
It is, and conspiracy theorists in me wants to think, this is their plan. They think they're gonna catch me with my pants down or rusty, and so that with that type of mindset, I have to make sure I'm on point, that I stay sharp, and that there is no rust. That I knock it out with the work, and we've been working. We climb mountains daily out there in Las Cruces.
Great fights, tough opponents. Tell us about the experience advantage taking on a kid that's barely getting into the depths of the waters that you've already swam through.
Well, here's the thing, he's never fought anybody like me before. I don't think amateur or pro. But I fought people like him, better than him in my opinion. And just you could take that, you could weigh that out. But at the end of the day, you have these unknown factors. Does he have that it factor? We're going to see October 14th because I got that it factor. Whereas experience aside, I can still fight. No matter, you want to take away the experience of those unknown things that you can't weigh. The things you can weigh, I can fight. I got good defense, I can punch, good jabs, good speed, good power, good footwork. And so with that package, experience out, seeing better opponents out, I'm still going to beat this man.
Again, with that veteran experience, something that has to weigh in the mind of, or I don't know how it doesn't weigh in the mind of boxers, the judges. We've seen it from the upper echelon ranks to the lower ranks. If you're not the hometown guy,
which I'm not,
you can't go to the decision. So as a veteran of this, how do you deal with that circumstance?
Well, I don't never want to look for a knockout and say, well, I got to knock him out, because then you're just going to beat yourself trying to knock this guy out. But I'm going to beat him in a manner that if they don't give me the win, boxing fans should riot on my behalf, because I'm going to beat this man from pillar to post, inside and out.
Where does it chalk up on your list of goals? Winning this fight, getting your second world title, a different world title.
Utmost importance. It's on the top of my list to be multi-time world champion. I wanted to be the undisputed champion. I'm not undefeated no more, but I can still be undisputed, and that's my goal. That's been my goal. My whole career is to get a belt and get another belt.
Now, with your style, what do you think is your biggest advantage against these upper echelon guys talking about reaching that goal of undisputed champion?
I think my footwork and my ability to adapt. If you give me a look and it's not working for me, I will change the game. And definitely don't let me see two looks. Don't let me see that look twice. You won't hit me with it again. So my ability to adapt, I think, is my brain is my biggest asset.
And how hard has that been on a boxing style to get fans? Because a lot of fans can't appreciate the more technical style. So how do you feel that's played out in your career? Do you think that your style has helped or kind of hurt you in that aspect?
I don't know, man, because I'm not a boring fighter as some people tried to put me in early in my career, but that's because they never seen me fight. In the early part of my career, I had to go yonder to get the chances that I needed. And then, the one time I was on, one of the first times I was on Showtime was against Devin Rodriguez, and that was just a crap show. I'd never gotten rid, but I won the fight fairly easily. And I think that's where they try to get I was a boring fighter, because that was there's just a bad fight, But I'm an action fighter. You have to. It's a boxing match. I'm not just pure defense minded. I want to hit you. I gotta hit you. So for the fans, I think they realize and understand what I bring to the game, and really I think my style is what's going to give me the longevity that I have. I don't get hit much. The wars I've been in, I still didn't get too much damage taken. My first cut in my whole career, my life, was my last fight. So thank God for that. And it was just minor cuts, and it was a good fight too. So even with the wars I've been in, I haven't taken much damage, and I'm ready to see how long we can take this.
Does that feel like a victory in of itself, that you don't take much damage? This is a violent sport that you participate in.
Right. I mean, think about it. If you can come out of a 12-round war fairly unscathed, that's definitely a victory in itself.
Having fought in the same era we've seen recently, well, again, Mayweather is retired, and this week we saw Andre Ward retire. What do you think of the legacies that those guys left behind, having competed in the same era?
Well, definitely pound for pound, greatest. Floyd is the best right now. Andre Ward, in my opinion, he could have stake and claim of being one of the best ever light heavyweights, aside from my man Bob Foster, who, real quick, fantasy matchup Monday, Bob Foster versus Andre Ward. Who you think will win that one at light heavy?
Jorge Hernandez is also in the room. I'm going to make him speak up.
That's a great question. I think Foster's left hand will sneak up on Ward over the top.
Would he catch him though? Would he catch Ward?
It'd be difficult. It'd be difficult to do it because
he was relentless.
He was relentless. That left hook. I mean, you can't really compare either one to any fighter either one has fought. So.
Yeah, that's true. That's a tough one. But I'm rocking with my man Bobby Foster on that one. And don't get me wrong, Andre Ward to me, inadvertently, he was like a mentor. He was definitely a role model to me in this sport. Being a man of God, his name is Son of God. And how he carried himself with his class of dignity throughout, no matter what. Kovalev was racist as hell during. He still kept his cool and beat his ass. So I love that kind of silent killer. It's like a ninja. You don't say much. You just come up and do work. And shout out to Andre Ward. I would hope I could bow like you, my man.
And then just think about your style. We talked about those greats. How do you want fans to talk about Austin Trout?
I just want them to say how it is. I come to fight. I never back down from a fight. I fought anybody. And I kept myself humble and dignified throughout the whole process. And this boxing game, you definitely lose yourself, or you have to lose yourself to make some more fans, And especially right now, I think ignorance sells. The more ignorant you are, the more, for some reason, they can put you on. Look at my man Adrian. He goes off and he talks, he curses, he says a lot of wild, outlandish, shock value things. He does shock value things. He gets a date once, twice, 3 times a year if he wants. So I refuse though. I refuse to lose myself in order to get that kind of advantage. If that's what they want, I'm not going to give it to them.
Not to lose yourself, but do you feel a need to maybe turn up the volume, whatever it is that you have to say or however it is to promote yourself? Some of them do it in that negative light,
right.
And we saw that from some of the big spectacles, and it grabs attention. But I also think it's important that you have to sometimes grab that camera, grab them people and say, no, look at me. This is what we're doing, and there are people that live the right way, as we just talked about Andre Ward. I think that was the best point about him, a guy that did it the right way,
right.
And was a tremendous role model in a community even that needed one where he came from.
Right, absolutely. No, I do feel there's a need to turn it up, get the camera and say, look, I am the best. I'm trying to prove it. Let me prove that. And in every press conference, every interview, like I say, I will tell you, I'm the best all the way around in this weight class. And it's stacked, too. There's a lot of good fighters in this class. And I'm telling you, I'm better than all of them. Even if it's by this much or by this much, I'm still better, and I just would love to prove it.
Now, what does it take in this fight business, you think, to make those matchups happen, to give you the opportunity to prove what you feel in the ring?
I need this belt. I get this belt, then, the opportunities is just, the world is mine. So getting this belt would be a great microphone, loudspeaker. I could take that belt and say, all right, is this thing on? Canelo, you want to come take a crack at this? No? Whatever. Cotto, Charlo, let's unify this thing. So I got to get this belt.
How do you get past her?
I go through him. And if he don't want to move, then I'll circle his ass and then go through him, There's many ways to skin a cat. And this cat has got a lot of fur to take off, so I'm going to try everything.
Austin Trout, thank you for the time.
Yeah, thank you, man. Thank you.
Didn't talk much about LFA 23 with Sal because he didn't watch it, but I mean, tons of finishes. Started off tonight with Peter Stonick knocking out Kendrick Williams, a back and forth striking affair. Stonick leaning in, power punch, a heavy hitter at featherweight, talking about how fast he wants to knock guys out. Kendrick Williams, a good kicker, but got put down hard. Sabina Mazo, that women's flyweight division, ultra talented. She did it again. Knockout, head kick, another star coming. Brian Billot got knocked down, was getting abused in the striking by Brandon Shaver, and pulls out the heel hook when they hit the ground. Worked hard for it in the second round. Ryan Spann devastates LaMarcus Tucker on the ground with an elbow causing bleeding. Had a big slam taking it to the ground. Got the back, the rear naked choke for the tap. Ryan Spann back in the win column. Andrea Lee, the left hook was working to body and the head. A huge step inside kick, taking Jamie Thornton to the ground and finishing, completing the title defense with the Kimura. A beautiful performance for Andrea Lee. Can't again wait to see her on one of those bigger stages, Bellator or the UFC. And there's a new welterweight champion in LFA, James Nakashima, with the unanimous decision. A deeper gas tank, crucial takedowns in rounds 4 and 5, but a plethora of early fouls really mars the victory. An early eye poke that caused bleeding, and who knows how much it blurred the vision of Derek Krantz. Something has to be done with the gloves. You also had 2 low blows. James Nakashima, though, evolving as a mixed martial artist. The striking is catching up to that high-level caliber grappling that he has. So the weekend also had LFA, you had the Bellator card, and you had UFC in Japan. Gokhan Saki, the huge knockout victory. Was it an early stoppage? Was it not? Enrique de Silva was, again, the right opponent. The guy has horrible defense, took abuse on the feet, makes Gokhan Saki's debut look that much more spectacular. And you know that's really what got the fans going, seeing Saki make that debut, whether it be for us or it be for his own health. Takanori Gomi gets put down again. A big win for Dong-Young Kim, the maestro, but Takanori Gomi has seen the best days in the past. Jussier Formiga, his striking looked clean, his jiu-jitsu looked on point, taking down Sasaki. As soon as Sasaki showed the back, Formiga was on it, attacking with the rear naked choke. Now, what do we have to look forward to this weekend? Because that was a great weekend of fights. Now, this upcoming weekend, it starts off Friday night on Access TV. Lion Fights, the art of 8 limbs, striking. You got the Muay Thai, love it, using the knees, the elbows, a little bit of work in that clinch. Lion Fights putting on some next level striking events to check out. Also talking about that next level striking, you have Glory 45 Amsterdam, the main event, the featherweight title on the line. Roman Van Roosmalen, fellow former world champion, Sergey Adamchuk, the challenger, both Dutch kickboxers there in their homelands. I'd say that Van Roosmalen is the more aggressive, more mauling fighter. Look for the devastating low kicks. Adamchuk is a little more reserved, a little more tactical, and almost likes to be too tentative, looking to set up the perfect punch. But I believe in their homeland, it's going to be a main event featherweight dogfight. You also have the co-main event heavyweights, Hesti Gergis and Brastatikov making his Glory debut. That one is going to be absolute mayhem. Not to mention that you're going to have a 4-man light heavyweight contender tournament. And then you also have the Glory Super Fight Series, where Wilness versus Belgari is the feature fight. That one at middleweight. That is a tremendous matchup. Glory 45. I love the striking. A weekend full of striking, no MMA action, and then getting local. Locally, I'll be up at the Buffalo Thunder Resort and Casino on Saturday night for Holmes Boxing's Countries Collide. You have a WBC Latino 145-pound, 10-round title fight main event. Juan Garcia Mendez, 19-2, against Juan Jose Velasco, who's 16-0. The co-main event, Ramon Reynoso, also of Argentina, who is 20-1, taking on Albuquerque's very own Jose Osorio, who is on a 4-fight win streak, 3 of the last 4 by knockout. He was my guest on Red Menace this week. You can check that out on YouTube, on ProView Networks channel, or on Comcast and ProView Networks if you're here locally in the Albuquerque area. Also, the card is expected to see Aaron Martinez, Bryant McLean. Get on out there for some boxing locally if you can. Saturday night, Buffalo Thunder Resort and Casino. Now, coming up, we do have a very busy local calendar. The following weekend, it is quiet, but then come the 14th of October, we're back at Buffalo Thunder for Jackson's MMA series. Top-notch card, always put on out there. The 21st School of Hard Knocks Boxing is having a pro card in Hobbs. And then on the 28th, it's been announced that King of the Cage will be at the Embassy Suites. So a busy month of October for the local fight scene. Now also get on over to Cage Minds MMA Show on YouTube. Check out our recent feature interview with Manny Moreau, who's going to be part of Bellator 184. Got a shout out to Mac10, MMA CK10, the I Got Your Back anti-bullying campaign, and Edwin Ruiz, everything that he does to support combat sports, athletes everywhere. Gotta thank Sal Mora for again joining me to help me talk about Bellator, the UFC, and a whole lot more. And it was great getting to talk with world champion and now world title challenger Austin No Doubt Trout. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Cage Minds Uncensored.